Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Together, please. Narayanam Namaskritya. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Aistiki. Replay. Okay. And today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 6 of the first canto, text 11. This is continuing the How I Came story of Narada Muni. We'll read text 11, 12, and 13. This is after Narada Muni has been orphaned. It's a very short description, isn't it? Just one short verse. Once upon a time, my mother who was going out to milk a cow was bitten on the leg by a serpent influenced by supreme time. I took this as the special mercy of the Lord, who always desires protection for his devotees, and so thinking, I started for the north. Okay, text 11. Spitan janapadas tatra Puragrama Rajakaran Keta Karvatavatischa Vanan Upanavanicha Spitan Janapadang Tatra Puragrama Vrajakaran Keta Karvatavatischa Vananyupavananicha. Please chant. Vitam Janapadam Satra Puragrama Vrajakaran Keta Karvatavatischa Spitan Janapadam Statra Puragrama Vrajakaran Keta Karvatavatischa Vananyupavananicha. Spitan Janapadam Statra Puragrama Synonyms together. Spita, very flourishing. Janapadam, metropolises. Satra, there. Pura, towns. Rama, villages. Raja, big farms. Akaran, mineral fields, mines. Keta, agricultural lands. Parvata, valleys. Tati, flower garlands. Cha, and Banani, forests. Upavanani, nursery gardens. Cha, and translation together. After my departures, I passed through many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens, and natural forests. Purport. Man's activities in agriculture, mining, farming, industries, gardening, etc. were all on the same scale as they are now, even previous to the present creation. And the same activities will remain as they are even in the next creation. After many hundreds of millions of years, one creation is started by the law of nature, and the history of the universe repeats itself practically in the same way. The mundane wranglers waste time on archaeological excavations without searching into the vital necessities of life. Get that? In other words, trying to understand the past without living a proper life in the present. After getting an impetus in spiritual life, Sri Narada Muni, even though a mere child, did not waste time for a single moment with economic development. Although he passed towns and villages, mines and industries, he continually went on to progressive spiritual emancipation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the repetition of history which happened some hundreds of millions of years ago. As it is said herein, only the most important factors of history are picked up to be recorded in this transcendental literature. Text 12, it's translation only. I passed through hills together. I passed through hills and mountains full of reservoirs of various minerals, gold, silver, and copper, and tracts of land and reservoirs of water, filled with beautiful flowers, fit for the denizens of heaven, decorated with bewildered bees and singing birds. Text 13. I then passed through 4 forests of rushes, bamboo, reeds, sharp grass, reeds, and caves, which were very difficult to go through alone. I visited deep, dark, and dangerously fearful forests, which were the play yards of snakes, owls, and jackals. Who'd like to read the purport?
Mendicant Parivrajaka Acharya to experience all varieties of God's creation by traveling alone through all forests, hills, towns, villages, etc. to gain faith in God and strength of mind, as well as to enlighten the inhabitants with the message of God. A sannyasi is duty bound to take all these risks without fear. And the most typical sannyasi of the present age is Lord Chaitanya, who traveled in the same manner through the central Indian jungles, enlightening even the tigers, bears, snakes, deer, elephants, and many other jungle animals. In this age of Kali, sannyasa is forbidden for ordinary men. One who changes his dress to make propaganda is a different man from the original ideal sannyasi. One should, however, take the vow to stop social intercourse completely and devote life exclusively to the service of the Lord. The change of dress is only a formality. Lord Chaitanya did not accept the name of a sannyasi, and in this age of Kali, the so-called sannyasis should not change their former names, following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. In this age, devotional service of hearing and repeating the holy glories of the Lord is strongly recommended. One who takes the vow of renunciation of family life need not imitate the Parivrajikacharya like Narada or Lord Chaitanya, but may sit down at some holy place and devote his whole time and energy to hear and repeatedly chant the holy scriptures, left by the great acharyas like the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Such a nice 12-hour kirtan on Saturday, right? Okay, now just imagine this scenario for a moment. Imagine chanting for like 10 hours or so, and evening time and tea time, and Shruti Sagar comes walking in a nice silk dhoti, beautiful silk kurta, hair oiled and slicked back. Looking very nice. It's his time at the kirtan stand, and he sits down and he begins singing a song by Taylor Swift. I'd sing one, but I don't even know one. So this is what happened to Narada Muni in his previous life. He was in an assembly of devotees, and he began singing in praise of the demigods. And the devotees were not happy, and they cursed him. So much of Srimad Bhagavatam is based on curses. And this was the curse of Narada Muni. He was cursed to take birth as the as a Shudra, in a low family. So this is how he took this birth, as the son of a maidservant. Maidservant is like a single mother with many men in her life, and it's a very ignominious birth. And so from this point, when his mother died, he really had no attachment. And as a result of having no attachment, he could just leave home. In our part of the world, that would be just unimaginable. For a child to be wandering in the street, there would be all kinds of social supports for that child. But in this society, it was not like that. In fact, even today, we have a friend, perhaps some of you know who he is. He and his brother took off from their home in northern India as little children, 5 and 8 years old. And they just, let's go have an adventure. And they stole some money from their parents and just went out and bought tickets and got on a train to a big city. And somehow, just through a series of incidents, they managed to make it there to this big city, and their parents had no idea where they were. No idea where they were. And so they're in the train station. They happened to meet some devotees who were opening an orphanage, essentially. And so they took these boys who had no idea where they were from or who their parents were, and took them to the orphanage. And so they grew up there as devotees in Mayapur. So parents, unbeknownst to the boys, they sold everything. They sold their land. They went from place to place throughout India to orphanages, trying to find their sons. And it took them something like 8 years before they finally found their boys. And their younger son, meanwhile, who is this friend of ours, he saw his parents there in Mayapur. He, of course, had been studying Srimad Bhagavatam. And so his parents found him and he said, "Your parents, don't you recognize us?" Guess what he said? He said, "Which parents are you?" From Chitraketu's past. He had been fully indoctrinated. Fortunately, they were able to reconcile, and they also became devotees. But the point is that Narada is in a very precarious position from this very tender age, 5 or 6 years old, just wandering. So he goes through all the places where he might find employment, shelter, care. He passes those. Why is he on this quest? What happened to him before this? What's that? Well, before his mother died, what happened? He had the association of devotees. He heard about Krishna, and yes, this is what I want to do. So when his mother died, he had enough Krishna consciousness to realize, okay, this is happening somehow by the arrangement of providence. Let me just go. So he was walking the path of faith. I think many of us, in our tiny ways, have experienced this in our lives at some time, where we're just kind of walking on faith. You ever heard this very sentimental paradigm? This analogy that's given that there's 2 sets of footprints on the beach, right? And then I looked back and there was only one, and I said, "Lord, I was walking with you, and then you abandoned me." The Lord says, "No, you fell and I carried." So this is the walk of faith. We're putting everything on the line and trusting God. This is what Narada Muni is doing. So as Narada is coming now to the very dangerous forest where no social support exists at all. Now he's liable to be prey to some dangerous animals. And still, he's walking on faith. So the purport Srila Prabhupada calls this the Parivrajacharya stage of sannyas. What does sannyas mean? Sannyas. What is the little meaning? Anyone know this? Sa means with, and nyas means nothing. Sannyas, with nothing. So this is Narada, all of a sudden elevated, right? Okay. He's my referee, Sanskrit Bengali scholar. He's finding himself in this precarious position, and yet fully trusting that God is guiding his footsteps. The stages of sannyas are four. The first is kutichek. No, kutichek means sannyas is meant to be for men who have been in a family life for many years and now need to kind of up their spiritual game. So this is not, it's not necessary or even recommended in this age, but it was a tradition for people who were pursuing spiritual life in their own gradual way. So at the age of 50 or 55, when the children were grown and could take care of their mother, the man is meant to go out and live in the woods. So this is the first stage, kutichak. The man is living in the woods and the family is preparing meals and bringing them. Now we say live in the woods. It's not, again, this assumes this kind of subtropical climate where you could do that. You could survive. It would not be the extremes of weather that would kill you. It would be very difficult, even in this part of the world, to do that. But this is done voluntarily, and the new sannyasi is broken in by getting meals from home. And then after a while, the more practiced renunciate starts going to various houses in the village, bahudak, and taking a little here and a little there for sustenance around the familiar surroundings of the village in which he has lived. And this next stage is called Parivrajacharya. At that stage, the sannyasi goes to other villages. And we talked, I think, last week about sometimes we don't travel much, a little provincial in our upbringing. Unless you chant Hare Krishna, then you're all of a sudden you're a world traveler. So Narada, the sannyasi would typically not have traveled much. Like you remember in the stories of Krishna and Vrindavan, once a year the cowherd men had to go to Mathura to pay tax. That was a big deal. That was their big travel adventure and social life to go, I don't know, what is it, 15 miles or so from Mathura to Vrindavan to Mathura. So, but it was an exciting and big change of scenery for them. So for the sannyasi to start going to new villages where he's not known, this is Parivrajacharya, wandering mendicant. The final stage is called Paramahamsa. And that stage, the very highly practiced sannyasi can be anywhere, can do anything, but there's no sense of attachment. So renunciation is progressively achieved through these stages of sannyas. However, it's not the goal, and this is the point of that sometimes derails those on the spiritual path. That renunciation is not the goal in and of itself. If you walked into the Bank of America over here and said, I renounce all the money in this bank. So the appointment lady says, well, sir, none of this was yours in the first place. So similarly, to say, I renounce this world. So, well, it's not ours in the first place. It was a question of renouncing something you don't own already. So sannyas is meant for this, what's called by Rupa Goswami, yukta vairagya, that is practical renunciation. It's a sense of nirmama, nothing belongs to me, but everything belongs to Krishna. So let me use everything in Krishna's service. This is actual renunciation, it's proper renunciation. Srila Prabhupada gives the example in the Ishopanishad about if you find a wallet on the street. Right? If you find a wallet on the street, then you have three choices. One is to say, not mine, I'm not touching it. Another is to say, oh, good, a wallet. And the third choice is to pick up the wallet, find the owner, and contact. Back on? Okay. So the one who finds the actual owner is both honest and wise, Prabhupada said. In other words, we see this world, we don't renounce it, we don't try to enjoy it, but we try to return it to its original owner. This is yukta vairagya, practical renunciation. Just to digress for a moment, I have a friend in Canada who was telling me years ago about his trip to China. He's a businessman. He was going to buy some marble in China. And when he was there, this was even pre-capitalism days that they have now, a very, very tightly controlled government. So he was accompanied by a minder who had to be with him at all times. So this minder took him from shop to shop, looking at this product, that product. Then when he got back to the hotel, he realized, I lost my wallet. I lost my wallet. My passport is in there. My money's in there. My plane ticket's in there. Everything I lost. He was just beside himself. And his minder said, don't worry, we'll go back tomorrow and get it. And the man thought, he's just trying to make me feel better. So the next day they went out and retraced their steps. And at one shop, sure enough, in the store window, there was the wallet. So he went in and reclaimed it. And he asked his minder, how did you know? He said, the government has passed laws that if anyone steals or does not return something they find on the street, they'll be executed. If you find something on the street, you have to put it in the nearest shop. Otherwise, you are subject to capital punishment. And so at first, people didn't take it very seriously. This is because some high government official had lost something and was not returned. And so at first, people didn't take it seriously. And he said that 25,000 people were executed. The army would go out and leave things in the street and watch. And if people did not handle appropriately, they were incarcerated and killed. And so everybody was putting their wallets in the store. So this the idea of being honest and wise is ideally voluntary and not coerced. Yukta Vairagya, in other words, is born out of our walk with God. That in this world, we know what we're here for, and we don't want to try to exploit anything in this world. We just want to engage it in Krishna service. So that is the story of Narada coming up here, how he encounters Krishna at the end of his walk. For us, the important thing to remember is that renunciation is important in spiritual life, and yet it is a byproduct of what? Bhakti. And what is the verse from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam where this is explained? Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yasyu Vairagyam Dhyanam Chayad Ahaitika. This means that when one is performing Bhakti Yoga, trying to serve Krishna, chanting Krishna's name, automatically renunciation comes. And automatically knowledge comes. Knowledge too, you have to study well. Yes, you have to study, but maybe some people aren't so good at studying. But Krishna in the heart gives knowledge. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto matatmatir jnanam apoyanam cha. He says in the Gita that for those who worship me, tesham satata yuktanam, those who worship me, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So these two things come on their own accord, concomitantly, knowledge and renunciation. They don't have to be strived for or sought out separately. If our purpose is just we want to serve Krishna, how much knowledge could Narada Muni have as a little boy, right? And how much renunciation has he practiced? Because of his focus on wanting to please Krishna, these things came to him automatically. There's a wonderful devotee named Jayananda Prabhu. Some of you heard this story, but it's such a great story. I want to share it again. So Jayananda Prabhu was an engineering graduate from Ohio State, went to San Francisco in the summer of love to try to find out spiritual truths. All he found was drugs and degradation. So he was very depressed, about to commit suicide. He was so depressed. And he heard about Srila Prabhupada, went to one of his classes at this little fledgling storefront temple in San Francisco. And he said, here I felt as somebody who's not going to cheat me. So he became Prabhupada's disciple. And he began attending every day. Prabhupada would give class in the morning and the evening. Often in the morning, he was the only one there. The evening would be full of hippies. And after some time, when he became Prabhupada's disciple, he was the only one with a job. So he continued his job as a taxi driver and paid the rent for the temple for some years, while those other acceptees were joining and chanting Haribol. So this Jayananda's character was such. He was just a hard worker and very responsible. He's a little older than most of the other devotees. But he was, so everybody leaned on him spiritually. He was so committed and so blissful. And yet, he was not a very astute scholar of Sanskrit or anything. It's not his proclivity. So when another devotee named Tamal Krishna, who joined there, he got his first and then second initiation. He was going to see Prabhupada to get the Gayatri mantra, which you get at your second initiation. So this ancient sacred Gayatri mantra, Tamal was getting, and Jayananda already had it. But he said, I want to go along too for a refresher. How to chant this mantra. It's 7 lines of Sanskrit to memorize. So he came, explained, Prabhupada said, yes, we'll start with you, Jayananda. And then he repeated, he said, now repeat after me. He said the first line, Om Bhur Bhava. Now Jayananda would try to repeat. He couldn't do it. Prabhupada tried after a half an hour or so. He said, it is hopeless. Anyway, whatever you say, because you're sincere, Krishna will accept. So Jayananda was known for having the fastest Gayatri in the West. Sit down to say Gayatri and he'd be up after 30 seconds. So the point is, and then when he, a little later, he developed cancer and died before Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada canonized him. He said we should always observe his disappearance day, which is around the appearance day of Lord Nrsimhadev. So the point is, knowledge in and of itself is not sufficient to conclude our walk with God, nor is renunciation. They are just byproducts, things that happen automatically on the way. This is called anartha nivritti. These stages of bhakti yoga, they're very scientifically laid out. The first is that there's a Tao Shraddha, a little preliminary faith. Okay, God exists. Maybe there is God. Maybe I'll try. I'm not finding it. I'm not doing it in the material world. It's not working for me. Let me turn my efforts to understanding God. This is a Tao Shraddha. And then, if one is sincere in that, one gets what? Sadhu Sangha, by association of devotees, other people on the spiritual path. Rare souls, Manusyanam Sahasra, out of thousands of people, hardly anyone is dead serious about understanding God. And of thousands who are trying to understand God, very few come to this fortunate position like Narada Muni of being around those who are actually realizing God and progressing in their spiritual life. So Sadhu Sangha leads to what? Bhajana Kriya, meaning that then one starts like getting up early enough so that you're yawning in Bhagavatam class. This is the scientific measure of Bhajana Kriya. Especially my class, but anyway. But Bhajana Kriya means one starts this regular practice of bhakti. Okay, there's some discipline of an ashram life. And ashram means, okay, ashram is a place where there's ashram, like no waste of time. Ashrama, no wasted time. In the ashram, one is required to observe celibacy, and that screens out 99.6% of the people right away. And then beyond that, it's a vegetarian environment, and then it's a drug-free, alcohol-free, tobacco-free environment. You know, who wants that? Nobody wants this, especially in your youth. You know, so, but those are dead serious. Okay, I'm accepting these austerities, and I'm going to do not just the negatives, but the positive. I'm going to chant. I'm going to learn Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm going to practice serving Krishna and experiencing that. This is Bhajana Kriya. So the results of Bhajana Kriya are what? Anartha Nivritti. What? It is. What, did they want to just skip right to prema or what? Anartha Nivritti, right? Anartha means things that are not necessary. Getting rid of things that are not really needed. So look at the sannyasi, a little Narada. What do you really need? You know, the beauty of one of the beauties of Bhajana Kriya and living a kind of austere life, relatively austere life for this world, is that one realizes how little one actually needs. Now we see that like in homeless people. Maybe some of you experienced homelessness. I have. Maybe some of you have, where you really have nothing to rely on but just whatever you can find day to day and minute to minute. It is a fact that many people who are homeless choose to be homeless. They're not necessarily homeless by circumstance. They just prefer to live that way because it's less entangling. So Anartha Nivritti teaches us that you can live very simply, just a little place to sleep, some simple food, and some shelter, and you have what you need. You don't require a lot of elaborate arrangements to maintain things. So Anartha Nivritti therefore leads to renunciation of unnecessary things, unwanted, unnecessary things. Warren Buffett, this famous investor, one of the richest men in the world, he still lives in his home in Omaha, Nebraska that he bought 50, 60 years ago, right? And he still drives an old pickup truck, and he's worth billions of dollars. So he's understood this principle of renunciation, that what do you really need? All you really need to get by is actually quite minimal. There's enough wealth in the world for everybody to have somewhere between $2 and $3 million. And yet, because of the greed and the sense of I have to have so much, it's so disproportionately distributed. So was it Gandhi who said, right? There's enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed in the world. Yeah. So renunciation is very liberating, because when you know how little you can get by on, it is so much more, you're so much more secure. You're so much more independent. You know that you can live austerely. Then you have something really valuable that will stay with you for life. So this is renunciation in practical terms, yukta vairagya. Let me just take what I need, and the rest I will engage in Krishna service. And for such a person, Krishna then reciprocates in these miraculous, mystical ways. The Bible has this beautiful section about this. Jesus, I think it's the Sermon on the Mount, that he says, behold the lilies in the field, they neither toil nor spin, but they're dressed in beautiful clothes, right? And look at the birds, they're not punching a time clock, but they're getting everything they need to eat. So how much more important, he says, are you, human beings, to your Father, because he's taking care of them. What makes you think he won't take care of you? That spirit of renunciation is the byproduct of trying to please Krishna. And it's a beautiful opulence. That, Krishna is called Sad Aishwarya Purna. He's full of 6 opulences. What are these 6 opulences? Beauty, strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, and renunciation. All those other things, everyone will agree they're opulences. But what is an opulence of renunciation? That is weird. it's an oxymoron, like legal ethics or military intelligence. It's a self-defeating statement. But renunciation, the opulence of renunciation means that one can be satisfied with very minimal provision. That's the point. Very minimal needs, and is not attached to anything. So Krishna is full of all of these things. He is beautiful. He owns everything. Everybody has heard of God. He's the most famous person. He is so beautiful. In fact, the gopis look at him and they're cursing Lord Brahma because he put eyelids on their eyes and they have to blink every once in a while. They don't want their gaze of Krishna to be interrupted even by a blink. He's so strong. He lives Govardhan Hill nonchalantly. All of these things are there in Krishna, but also full renunciation, meaning that he creates this whole material creation and he's not attached to any of it. None of it affects him in any way. This is explained in chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. He manifests it and yet he's not attached to any of it. So the position of sannyas is like this. One has come to that realization of developing the opulence of renunciation through the service to Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada was in India for many years trying to find interested people in Krishna consciousness. He wanted to start the Krishna consciousness movement, teaching in English as he had been instructed by his spiritual master. No one was interested. He had one casual disciple after maybe 20 years of efforts. And so he came to America, miraculously. And then in America, he found interested people. He found young people who were, the hippies, see, had a little bit of renunciation. They didn't want the wealth and the facilities of their parents, but they couldn't go all the way. It was called, what is it? Market of Vairagya, is that it? The renunciation of the monkey. A monkey is very detached, lives under a tree, can give up everything except sex life. So these are the hippies. And intoxication. But anyway, they managed even to give up those things with Prabhupada and become serious devotees. And so Srila Prabhupada then brought them back to India. It was revolutionary. Because remember, India had been ruled by foreigners, mainly Anglos, for the past 200 or 300 years. And so to see these Westerners coming and practicing their faith was very exciting for the Indian people. And so large crowds would gather, tens of thousands of people would gather to hear from Prabhupada and see the devotees chanting, and they just loved it. And so on one of these occasions, there were young men and young women on the stage, and Srila Prabhupada, very fearlessly, he stood up and said, all these boys and girls are better than sannyasis. Sannyasis are highly respected in India. They wear saffron, and people give them donations automatically. But and there are many who are in the sannyas business, by the way. They go home, they come out, check into work, put on their orange robes, beg all day, and then go home and watch TV. But these, especially for young ladies, to be called better than sannyasis was shocking. Young boys and young girls. These boys and girls, they're better than sannyasis. Then he quoted the first verse from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It says, Nashrita karma palam karyam karyam karoti ya. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha naniragnir nachakri. That means that one who works as he's obliged is actually a renunciate. In other words, if we do our duty, that which is in front of us, we do it, that person is a sannyasi, and not one who lights no fire and performs no work. So he was praising these young disciples as better than sannyasis because they were doing their duty of serving Krishna. And therefore he commended them and said that this is actually a higher level than just simply being renounced. So this is the topic for today, talking about renunciation, talking about Narada Muni's forced renunciation, and yet how he rose to the occasion, was not distracted by the villages and the cities, the economic opportunities, and went fearlessly into the woods to in his pursuit of the knowledge he had gotten from the Bhaktivedantins. All right, any comments or questions? Go people.
Thank you for class, Prabhu. This is kind of just a historical question. The purport mentions that in reference to Lord Chaitanya, one doesn't change their name when they take sannyas. So I was wondering what's the deeper significance of that. And then I was wondering if Prabhupada actually did that throughout the years. Or did he ever change someone's name?
He generally did not change names. So the question, yes, when one enters that renounced order of life, one typically will change dress and typically change name, but Lord Chaitanya did not. This was the point. So no, Srila Prabhupada did not change the names of the sannyasi disciples generally. However, later on, that became a practice in our Sangha. So why I don't know. No idea. But yes. Oh, Shama, do you have a question? And then Nagopal.
I think there's a few people that he changed. Bhakti Tirtha Swami was Ganesh Das, right?
Bhakti Tirtha.
Was that after
That was
Prabhupada?
later, yeah.
Okay. And I think Bhakti Chumaraj maybe had a different name.
That's possible.
Okay. I had a comment about renunciation. So I was thinking one of the perks of renunciation is that when any of those other qualities are not paired with renunciation, it can be really off-putting. Like when someone has any of those other things,
But they don't
beauty,
have
wealth, but they don't have that humility of like, this is not really mine. So they can be proud and like narcissistic. But when they're paired with renunciation, immediately they're more attractive.
That's beautiful. That's such a nice point. Yes, thank you. Yeah, they're just obnoxious, full of themselves. All of us struggle with that, isn't it? If we have some little opulence, some talent or some kind. Oh. If somebody what do you do if somebody praises you and you want to practice renunciation? What do you do? That's nice. That's yes. Kunti, what do you do? Yes, it's actually better to accept it, just as a matter of practical social. Better to say thank you than say no. Why? Because if you say no, then you want people to say yes. So, better just end the conversation.
So I'm wondering about, as we're going through the Bhakti Yoga process, it's natural to feel sometimes like, all we need is Krishna and Prabhupada's mercy and things like that. And then practically also sometimes living in the renounced life, we feel I don't have what I need materially. So how to deal with that? Is that like, should we look to meet those needs, or
Yes.
is it like
right? In other words, if we're so renounced that we're not getting our basic needs met. Yes, and that's a cause of losing our spiritual life. What's it? Niyamagraha, to maybe follow the rules so strictly just for the sake of following them and being oblivious to one's own condition. And later in the 6th chapter, that same chapter, Yoga, Krishna says that yukta hara viharasya, yukta cetasi karmasya, yukta navabodhasya, yoga bhavati dukkha. This means yukta means temperate, moderate, reasonable. So reasonable eating, yukta ahara, and then yukta vihara, reasonable recreation. Yukta cetasya, regular, reasonable sleep, and karma and work. So one who is regulated, temperate, moderate, reasonable in eating, sleeping, work, and recreation can conquer all the miseries of life by practicing the yoga system. So the severe austerities of the impersonalists who don't have the mood of service for God, but rather want to enter into God or become God, that is sometimes characterized by this extreme self-denial. Even in the Catholic Church, isn't it? They have the self-flagellation. Yeah, we should keep one of those at Krishna House, right?
So kind of a follow-up question is that some people may have different needs, but based on their character or their propensity, or I don't totally fully understand, but I've noticed that some people kind of need less, but some people may need more. Yes. Why is that difference there? And then also, how can we tell if it's a need versus maybe like an unruly material desire or something?
Right. Definitely people have different needs, and it's important that we all recognize that this is an example of becoming proud, like proud of one's renunciation. Say, well, look how much you're eating. This is why in the ISKCON Disciples course, one of the first lessons is about things you should never share with anybody. Remember this? Anyone remember? What are the three things? Your mantra, your worshipful deity, and your guru. Yeah, these things should be confidential and you keep to yourself. Why? Because they create division. And particularly your mantra or vows. If you're taking a vow, okay, I'm going to fast all day on Ekadasi. And that should just be between you and Krishna. It's not necessary, by the way, but just as an example. Okay, I'm going to chant 108 rounds today. How many are you chanting? You know? So these things are just to be kept personal. So, yes, people have different needs based on their psychophysical nature, and that's part of the Varnashram system to recognize your needs. The way the measure is, am I taking too much, not taking enough to test is, am I happily serving Krishna today? If I'm happily serving Krishna today and I'm not worried about I need this, I need that, then that's a sign that you have the proper balance. Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Sometimes we think that's a blessing, but it's actually an order. So if we're not happy, that should be acknowledged. And then we have to, like Vyasadeva in the previous chapter, right? He was unhappy and his guru helped him diagnose him. So we're going to be taking a picture in just a minute now, right? Please.
Well, to that, I just had something on. You said the Markata Vairagya, the monkey renunciation is a funny story. I don't know where it's from, but Mahavishnu Maharaj talks about it, the Indian sannyasi. And he said how one day these monkeys, they said, okay, we're gonna fast today. It was like Ekadashi or Janmashtami or something. They were totally fast. Like, okay. So they're all just hanging out, bored, and not eating anything. So then the leader of the monkey said, well, let's go climb on the tree that has fruits so that when the time for breaking fast comes, the fruits are right there. Said, okay. And they climb on the tree. So let's sit on the branch that has the most fruits so that, there are so many of us. So when time comes for breaking fast, we'll quickly grab the fruit. And then they're like, well, let's just pick the fruits right now. So it's time for breaking the fast. We'll just eat it. And then they said, okay, let's hold it in the hands. And then they said, well, let's just put it in the mouth. So when it's time to break the fast, we just chew it. So then the monkeys think, well, it's already in the mouth. Might as well eat it. So Maharaj was talking about determination and spiritual life. But it just made me think when he said monkey renunciation, it's monkey renunciation. Just can't hold on to it.
Good. Yes, Prabhupada calls the monkey this naked sannyasi. Right? Okay. Quickly getting back to your question, Gopi, I just wanted to add to that. In the long term, that means Varnashram is meant for this purpose, to put us in the right position where we can peacefully serve Krishna. In the right ashram and the right varna, the right social position and the right occupation. So, yeah. And in the interim, see this age between like 18 and 25, 26, it's a very unstable age because we haven't solidified our varna and ashram. And so there's some constant anxiety or dissatisfaction because we're not established yet. And we're just in the last stages of maturing. You see, so just the opulence of patience during these years is the most rewarding. Instead of trying to rush into some situation that is really not urgent for our spiritual life, that is a cause of complications and difficulties. So this great challenge for everybody in this age. It's like adolescence is a hellish age. Post-adolescence is a hellish age. Middle age is what is it not? No. Well, the point is, there's never a comfortable position in the material world. And if we're able to come to a position where we are accepting of that in our youth. In our old age, we are forced into it. But in our youth, we can voluntarily accept that I'm not meant to be comfortable in this world. Instead of trying, okay, I'm gonna try this and this and this and this, and I'll find it, you know? That is the beauty of Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Anartana Vritti. I can actually tolerate this uncertainty for a while because I am on that spiritual path. And I'm not going to let anything get in my way. Okay. All right, anything else? Ready to go? All right, so thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai. Wonderful. We're going to have a little celebration tomorrow, Prabhupada's disappearance day, right? Yes.
So yeah, we're gonna take a picture outside and